steps and a baby cries. High above you can hear the church bells start to ring. And as the heaviness, oh, the heaviness, the body settles in, somewhere you can hear a mother sing. Then it's one foot, then the other, as you step out on the road. Step out on the road. How much weight, how much? Then it's how long and how far and how many times. Oh, before it's too late. Call all angels, call all angels. Walk me through this one, don't leave me alone. Call all angels, call all angels. We're trying, we're hoping, but we're not sure how. On every day you gaze upon the sunset.
I was headed south on the 5, and I was in a self-created trance. Heading from Seattle, I was on my way to assist my loved one in ending her own life. She had been many years with cancer. She had sought wellness valiantly and with everything she had in her. And she was at a place where it was too much. It was throwing up every day, horrible constipation, so much pain. I'd been by her side emotionally, energetically, spiritually, and also naturopathically for many years at that point. And we had taken her far past her original prognosis, and still it appeared that she had a date with somewhere else because nothing ultimately was going to keep her from this deterioration that was happening. We had done our best. And now it was time to actually focus on letting go. And I had encouraged her to realize that she could let go fearlessly. She could surrender with dignity, true dignity, and an embracing of both the life as it had been, as she had lived it, and also an embracing of the unknown that was to come in a way that is unprecedented. And she opted to go with that, to walk that path that few do, of entering that process courageously, freely, free in the spirit and free in her mind. There were times I would tell her, she would call me so afraid to die, afraid of that unknown, and I would ask her, honey, just die now. Don't wait. Just go for it. Surrender into what that feels like. And at first she was just like, what? What do you mean die now? It's like now I'm just inviting death? It's just going to bring it on even faster. And they said, no, your fear is what brings it on faster. You're racing towards it as you attempt to run so hard away from it. To actually face what you fear and see into and through it, to where you actually relax your nervous system that's going to invite the most amount of balancing and longevity possible. She really got my point and decided to take that on. And the first time was dramatic, to say the least. She made a bath, lit her candles, made it ceremonial, and left the world. Let herself experience dying. And it was alchemical for her. She really digested in that process of putting herself through the emotional motions of what that was to mean. She digested her resistance to that unknown. And she became more and more buoyant the closer she got to her departure day, to where by the time it came, she would call me laughing. The least bit of angst that would show up, she would laugh, and she would tell me, you know what, Heidi, I know what you're going to say, go die again. Okay, I'm going to go, bye. She'd go die in order to live, and she did become, as her motto was, I'm a liver. She had liver cancer, and she was a thriver by the time she was leaving the world. And so I was on my way to go and assist this dear one in the actual release. I was donning a death doula hat, and for that role, I was preparing myself deeply. I was spending a lot of time in quiet and centering down into the realm she was about to enter fully, so that I could already be there and beckon her with love towards me in the spirit. And in that way, immerse myself enough to help her see this is not a dangerous place. This is home. You're returning home. And we can experience that home while we're still alive. And that's exactly what I did shamanically to help her to also experience it while she was alive, so the leap didn't feel so dramatic, so gnarly of a step to take. So I'm driving south towards her, and as I do, all of a sudden, as I'm in that state of heart and mind, so prayerful, so quiet and balanced, a car right ahead of me goes flying airborne off to the left and into the pasture that was the median between the north and south lanes. And it began to flip, and that car easily was going 80, 85, easily, as it launched and began its flipping. And it went side over side over side, and I watched it. It felt like in slow motion, but it was extremely violent and extremely fast, this flipping. And by the time it stopped, it was pancaked. I figured the people in that car were done. In a way, it was one of those where you hope that they are, in as much as it could be worse to live and be so broken apart inside in your body. Either way, I was pure guided material. I was just so surrendered in the mind that everything that came next occurred out of a primal, pure listening. I pulled my truck over to the side. I got out and started running at my top speed, which is not very fast. Given my health condition and all the years, I wasn't athletic at that point, and and an athlete showed up, I was sprinting as best I could. And as I did, I could see that some distance away from the car, a little boy was on the ground with two women hovering over him. And then I could see a man, a tall man, racing up the incline of the median towards my side of the road. And then I look over and there's another man also racing, but racing towards this man. And both are essentially charging each other like two bulls. Enraged. At my particular pace, we all converged. I was running at them, they were running at each other, and I landed myself like ham in a sandwich directly between the two. And it was all so last minute and so synchronous that they essentially bounced off my body instead of bouncing into each other. I felt the impact. And they tried to come at each other again. And they're screaming at each other. And it's got this heavy duty, murderous vibe to it. The man was clearly the father, the one that clambered up the median back onto the highway, was screaming at this other man that he could have killed him and his son. And I stayed right in between them. I jockeyed it, and I just kept telling him in particular, he was the most aggressive. I kept saying, don't do this to yourself. Don't tarnish your own spirit, your own self over this. I kept saying this to him over and over. Think of your son. He needs you right now. This won't do any good for you. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I just kept standing in his way, and he just so wanted to hit me to get to the guy. And yet he knew I didn't deserve that. So he kept pushing at me and trying to throw me to the side, and I wasn't having it. And finally, he gives up, and he starts searching, rummaging through what was like, his stuff was like confetti all over the median. His car had been full of stuff, and it was just rolling around in the wind. And he starts searching frantically through it all, yelling, my phone, I need my phone, where's my phone? I need to call his mother. He couldn't find his phone, and then all of a sudden, he bent over in absolute agony. He was just screaming in pain. And then he just melted. He fell onto his side, gripping at his insides. And I just thought, this guy, that he's even alive. This guy probably has internal organ damage. And he just was so full of endorphins that he didn't feel it. And it's catching up. This is what it looked like, certainly. And I asked him not to get up. I said, please don't try to get up. Just stay down. I have to be with my son. And then he starts clambering over to his boy, who is lying very quietly in what looked like almost a paralyzed state or a emotionally frozen state. I couldn't quite tell. And the man collapsed right about at his son's feet. And he started to go in and out of consciousness. My deep sense was that the best thing I could do was to connect these two. And I was still in such a quiet state. I had been shadowing this guy. much to his chagrin, just saying, where might it, how can I help? Let me call, give me the number, let me call the mom. And he finally was able to get her number to me, her digits, and I did call, and I left a message, and I just told her, your son is alive. I don't know exactly what his condition is yet. He is alive. It does look like he's going to make it, because it did very much look that way. And I'll make sure to get you, what the name of the hospital is, and as soon as I know. And then once I left that message, I just put my hands first on both of them together, and then I was drawn to go to the man's feet. And around this time, the ambulance had come. The EMTs were cutting his clothes off of him, trying to revive him. And I just held his feet. And I remember tuning into the ground state of us all. I just tuned into the essence, the presence that was not dramatized or frantic, that where fear wasn't the flavor. And instead it was a type of emptiness and nobodiness. I went into a deep experience of nobodiness, which also every time and any time I tap that, taps me into allness, usness, the oneness principle experienced throughout my being. And I merged with him. I merged with the boy. And I invited any and all that trauma to simply not get blocked in the body, and instead to just flow freely through and out. And in a way that then just recycled it back into balance. And as I invited this, mainly, there was no mind, no agenda, really. It was just an awareness that that's possible, and an invitation and an opening of myself to channel anything that I could to be a catalyst for this. Very quickly, they were swept up and put in the ambulance and taken away. And at that point, I went up to the other man, who was still just irate. His vehicle was okay. And he was so angry that he had been what he felt was falsely accused of reckless driving, and that he had been the reason. He said, this guy came up on me so hard, and that he then had to skid off the road and caused himself this damage, and now he's wanting to come at me about it and accuse me. And I literally didn't do anything, and I just did my best to help him to center back down, just pointing out, like, this is a guy who nearly died and nearly had his son die, and he was beside himself. And if he really was the one responsible for potentially his own son's near-death experience here, and could have been death, it's a lot to take on, and it's really easy for the psyche to want to defer blame and find a scapegoat out of just pure fear of, my God, did I really do this? It's just deep denial and how that whole thing works. And I just told him, if he does think you did it, like, do you have children? He's like, yeah, I do. And he happened to have a baby seat in the back. I'm like, can you imagine if you felt that either you or someone else was at fault of nearly killing your baby? Like, you'd probably be able to. And he's like, I absolutely would. And I was like, well, I'm not calling it good or bad. I'm just saying, it's understandable. And he's like, it is. So he left more in a less irate state. And I got back in my car and I headed down the road. I headed back onto my own mission of getting to my lovey who was about to enter the other realm. And I called the mom, Angela, and I told her the latest, where they were headed, just gave her the update. And I told her, keep me posted. Let me know how everybody ends up doing. And sure enough, I heard back from her. And as it turned out, this little boy and his dad ended up leaving the hospital only a few hours later. This is already literally feels like an impossibility. If you had seen the degree to which this car was stomped upon, no one should have lived through this experience. I have pictures to tell the tale, and even the child himself, when he saw the picture of the car, after they had turned it back over, it had ended on its head. His comment was, how could I have possibly survived that? Let alone just walked on out of the hospital, free of severe injury. His mother told me, I thought to myself, well, probably the next day, the truck will hit, because that's often how the body does. It delays in its actual reactivity. No, the next day, no reactivity. The kid was glowing. She sent me a picture of him. He was glowing and well. The dad went home, went back to work. It was almost as though nothing had happened. They had a few bruises on their arms. What? So I told the mother what I had done and what had happened. This working with energy and working with consciousness and with the quietness, bringing that to it all. And I told her where I was headed and what I was doing. I was going to help my loved one leave the world. And she said, my daughter, my first daughter, died in childbirth. And I know what death is all about. And I know what it also isn't all about. It's definitely not an end. She came and she touched in, and then she blessed us and she left, and she was our earth angel, and she's still with us. And I said, I really get such a strong sense that your daughter helped your son to survive that and be as unscathed as possible. And the father too. And she said, I have no doubt of it. She said, for sure, he actually talks to her to this day. He has a relationship with her spirit. And I said, that is exactly what I'm doing my best to help my loved one who's leaving truly and completely trust that she will continue her relationships just from a different dimensionality. She said, that's the case. And I asked her, what was your baby's name? What did you name her? I was so drawn to know. And she said her name was Rachel. Rachel happens to be a name that only the very night before all this happened, I had just happened to be typing, transcribing over and over and over that particular name because I was helping my loved one get her fiction book that she had written in pen transcribed into the computer. Rachel just happened to be the name of the main character to her novel. Her main character was part Japanese, part American. Her American name was Rachel. Her Japanese name was Mitsuko. Mitsuko is also her little furry dog, my friend's little furry dog. And that little furry dog was curled up next to me as I kept writing her name, Mitsuko, over and over in this novel. And the name Rachel. The name Mitsuko happens to mean child of light. And this little child who had been born only briefly and died had helped her brother, another child of light, to survive an absolutely deadly accident. And in so doing, they all helped me to convey to my loved one all the magic that does exist between the realms, the continuity. It helped her so much to prepare in her leaving. This is how life truly is when we center down enough to notice it and to participate in it actively.
Fearless people, careless needle, harsh words are spoken with lives that are broken, forceful aging. Help me, I'm fading. Heaven is waiting. Time to move on. Crossing that bridge with lessons I've learned. Playing with fire and not getting burned. I know what you're going through, but time is the space between me and you. Life carries on. Just say die, and that would be pessimistic. In your mind, we can walk across water. Please don't cry, it's a prayer for the dying. I just don't know what's got into me. We're crossing that bridge with lessons I've learned. We're playing with fire and not getting burned. You're going through, but time is the space between me and you. There is a light through that window. Hold on, say yes. Life carries on. Carries on. between the